Good evening. My name's Jason Debley, and tonight I thought I'd just do a quick little video about an upcoming whiskey tasting I have. Usually when I do whiskey tastings, I try to limit the number of whiskeys in a flight. I like to do like 3, where you explore different flavors, and I used to do a lot of whiskey tastings where I would start with like Glenmorangie, 10-year-old, and then so they get the natural spirit, and it's 10 years old, and then try a 12-year-old Nectar d'Or where it's aged in French wine casks for 2 years to finish it and see how that changes the flavor, becomes more sweet. And then the third flight would be like La Santa, another 12-year-old, or the Quinta Rubin, which I reviewed last week, which was a 12-year-old but has now become a 14-year-old. But you would see this progression of flavor from kind of the naked spirit to then finished in the French white wine, and then Quinta Rubin in port, and see the difference in flavors going from a drier, say, grapefruit to a honey orange to, with the Quinta Rubin, a dark berry, plum, dark fruit. I have a new whiskey tasting I'm going to do this weekend, and I thought I would just do something different, and so in totally different bottles that I'm not familiar with too much, or at least the crowd I'm going to be with aren't familiar with. I mean, I know Talisker really well. I know Crown Royal, but this is a special edition Crown Royal series. And I certainly don't know much about Few Distillery. So this is a new American distillery. I don't know how old they are. I should have looked that up before we came on this video. But they're maybe 10 years old. I might be wrong. I'll have to Google that. But this is an American whiskey. They're based in Evanston, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And this whiskey is it's not aged for very long, definitely under 4 years, minimum of 1 year to be called American whiskey. It's not bourbon, it's not Tennessee whiskey, but it's American whiskey because it's made in America. The mash bill is 70% rye, 20% corn, and 10% malted barley. But what's really interesting is the alcohol by volume is 46.5%, so it's got quite a bit of kick there. Price, not super cheap in Canada. In the US it would be cheaper, don't know what that is. I can't remember what I paid, $70, $60, but I think even in the US it's $50. So it's not cheap, but it's truly small batch. So that will be interesting. Oh yeah, and the name Few, F-E-W, how they got that name is, so they're based in Evanston, Illinois, and also in Evanston, Illinois is an American home of the temperance movement of America, and they named this whiskey, or the distillery, F-E-W, after the initials of a former president of the Women's Christian Temperance Movement. Her name was Frances E. Willard. She died in 1898. She's probably rolling over in her grave as we speak. Next up, Crown Royal. So Crown Royal in 2016, which is owned by Diageo, that bottle there, they launched this, what they call Noble Collection, where they take the standard Crown Royal Deluxe whiskey and they tinker with the wood management, finishing it, which I mean for a short period of time, putting it into French oak or different types of wood, also tinkering with the mash bill or doing something different. So I haven't tried this, but I think it's going to be good. Comes in the velvet bag, which once your kids are of a certain age, beyond toddlers, they can fill it up with marbles. And it's, Diageo are masters of marketing, and the bottle is very attractive. And so we're looking at Crown Royal aged in French oak. Should be interesting. And then finally is the classic Talisker, the whiskey, I believe, of James Bond, right, Mrs. Moneypenny? And Talisker, not expensive for a single malt. 10-year-old age statement. Talisker also has a bit of a kick with the alcohol by volume of 45.8%. You know, it's lots. It's a great entry into the more peated, smoked whiskies of Scotland. It's not an Islay, it's from the Isle of Skye. So it's the island region, but not Islay, but Skye. And you're going to, in this whiskey, enjoy white pepper, brine, seawater, sweetness, and beautiful, distinctive smokiness. Some of the people this Saturday night at my whiskey tasting have not tried any of these. And I thought it would be interesting to do, like I said, the progression. So you start with an American rye whiskey, which is probably going to be a lot of rye flavor. A bit of spice and cinnamon, I'm guessing, I'm not sure. Then you're going to have your Crown Royal, which is going to be super smooth Canadian whiskey, very sophisticated, probably exhibiting some nice mahogany and caramel. I'm hoping, not artificial caramel, but a nice tasting Baker's, Candy Maker's caramel. And then we're going to progress to Talisker, a little taste of the sea. And we're going to see probably go from not very complex, more complexity, to the most complexity. But the complexity is different because these are whiskeys from 3 different great nations who are allies and I hope always remain so. Thanks for tuning in. Next week I will review one of these, provided there's any left after the whiskey tasting is over. And also, just a final note, if you ever do a whiskey tasting, the other thing I tend to have is lots of water, spring water, not tap water, on hand, and French white bread sliced up, kind of to take as bites in between the whiskey. Cheers. Talk to you next week.